At Jewelers Mutual, we're a little obsessed with jewelry. Obsessed like auctioneers with talking fast.
50, we're going to sold.
Pop stars with auto-tune.
Yeah.
And dentists with asking questions
So, how did he propose?
after they've put their hands in your mouth.
Great.
Yes, we've made jewelry our obsession for over 100 years. We love it so much we named our kids Ruby, Amber, and Opal.
Venti soy latte for Opal?
At Jewelers Mutual, we insure jewelry and only jewelry, which is why people who are also obsessed with jewelry trust us with theirs.
Rock and roll doggy.
It's a musical.
Hey everybody, welcome to Rock and Roll Doggies. It's our podcast. It is two lifelong friends breaking down music. It's been important in our lives. My name is Jason Acquisto. This is my friend, Don Pardue. What's up, Don?
How are you?
I'm great, man. How's things in Carolina?
Doing well. Survived a hurricane and an earthquake last month, so I think the state's going to be A-okay.
Hey, nothing is out of reach in 2020. Right?
Isn't that the truth?
We are breaking down the U2 catalog, going through album by album, and talking about the songs track by track, and kind of what our reaction was, what those songs have meant to us, giving them a rating. And of course, everything is subjective. We would never say that this is the truth and the objective, fact about, art is subjective. Art belongs to everyone, and what it means to you is not what it means to somebody else. And so this is our own personal perception of what these songs have meant to us, U2, and going album by album. So we did Boy, we did October, and now we have the breakthrough, in my opinion. This is War, 1983. What do you think about War?
My first impression after having listened to it recently is that it's their first alternative album, I think. I think Boy and October had punk influences. It was post-punk. This seemed to be the first album where I would define their work as being alternative, American alternative, if you will.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. It's definitely a mature sound. It is the analogy of the older boy going through the struggles of growing up on the album Boy and October. And now he's grown up and he's worldly. He's scarred by life. He's older. He's got a cut lip. He's angry. And war being the theme of the album. I always heard Bono talk about that's what everything seemed like. It seemed like that's what was going on in the world everywhere in 1982 when they started recording this, was war. War in a spiritual sense as well as physical. And so as we dive into these songs, that will become apparent. Steve Lillywhite. Is this the ultimate Steve Lillywhite album? I'm not a musician. I just know what I like on in terms of a style of different producers. This combines all the elements I like about him. A really strong mix of percussion and bass, and a clean mix that everything, it's not atmospheric like Daniel Lanois and Brian Eno. It's definitely, every track is sharp, and it's also just aggressive and jagged. I thought of 4 words that describe this album from me: smart, harsh, tight, and focused. Smart because these guys have gone through their adolescent musings on the world and on their religious growth and development. And this is now their statement, as in, like, I'm a man and here's what I think about life and here's where we are. Harsh because it doesn't pull any punches. It is blatant in its opinions and its statements and in its statements. Tight because of the production I mentioned, and focused because this band is confident. This band knows who they are. So what do you think of that?
I tend to agree with all of that. I think if you were to kind of succinctly encapsulate what all that means, to me, it means maturity. They have, and particularly when it comes to Bono's songwriting, when you look at the lyrics of October versus War, I see a writer who has quickly matured in the craft. I mentioned in October that there were moments where there was lyrical meandering. There is no lyrical meandering on this album. It is, as you said, it's direct, it's to the point. You know, this is the third album we've reviewed. I think at this point, I can honestly say that prior to us starting this podcast, I had underestimated the influence of Adam and Larry, and have probably overestimated the influence of the Edge. I think what I've learned is what makes Edge so good is he is a minimalist, but he could jump all the way out and just blow you away, but he's selfless in that he steps back and he allows the band as a whole to really come into their own. You know, my personal opinion, he's probably the best musician of the group.
Mm-hmm.
And there are moments where he kind of steps out to the front, but he doesn't overtake the passion and the vocals of Bono. He doesn't overstep the rhythm section. And by doing so, he makes everybody in the, I know this sounds trite, this is a sports statement, but he makes everybody else in the band better.
No, but you're exactly right. And that's a great observation. I agree. We keep saying, and when boy, Larry Mullen Jr. is the star of this album. We said that, it's true. And on October, we said, Adam Clayton is the star of this album. I mean, we have realized how good and how tight those two guys are and how important they are. Like you said, it's not an Eddie Van Halen situation where the Edge steps out into the spotlight and wails for a while, and then we go back to the regular song. You know, they're all blended. And that's why I think the production is so important. And maybe that's part of the reason I think Steve Lillywhite, that's part of the reason I think Steve Lillywhite does a great job on this album, making them play off each other. You know, you're right. I took for granted those two guys. I've always liked, I've always liked and appreciated, but still, when I started listening to these tracks on War, I'm like, man, that bass line, listen to that.
I viewed them as complementary pieces. I did not view them as primary pieces. And I was mistaken to have done that. I don't know that there's a song up to this point where Edge has just kind of stepped all the way out front and said, I'm going to blow you away with what I'm going to do. I don't think that comes till Pride. I think when you hit Pride, then Pride is Edge's song through and through. And I think you get a little bit of that on New Year's Day, and there's some other songs, but I'm getting ahead of myself. But you know, another thing that struck me about this album too is that the title of the album is War, and we want to kind of pigeonhole that as being about a conflict between groups of people or countries. But yet, if you look at the themes and what the songs are really about, you know, it's not as if every song is about international conflict or conflict between nations. There's a lot of internal conflict that's going on here, and conflict between people at the individual level. I don't think the title is necessarily a macro issue. It's almost a micro or intrinsic issue as well.
Absolutely agree. And I think that's what makes it brilliant, is that it can be a literal war. It can be a symbolic, metaphoric type of war. And man, it hit me right at the right time. 1983, it was released February 28th. The year 83, Reagan was president. Hip hop was still in its infancy. I borrowed this from an internet write-up I saw, just a great little capsule of what rock music was in the midst of a severe identity crisis. Now, we were only teenagers. We weren't, you know, rock critics or like we didn't know that much. But I mean, I remember thinking that what exactly is happening in the world of music? I didn't know how to categorize U2. And it seemed like, at least in our limited scope of experience, that it was a strange time in music. Right?
Retrospectively, I think that's a very accurate statement. Yeah, when you're 14 or 15, you don't have a perspective, and you don't understand the music scene, and you know, all you know is what you pick up from Rolling Stone and a little bit off MTV. It's not like it is now, where you have, you know, everything at your fingertips. But retrospectively, I think that's spot on. I think rock was looking for a real identity. There was a lot of pop. There was new wave. Where does rock and roll, true rock and roll, gut punching rock and roll, Where does it fit in?
But I was a little bit intimidated at the prospect of breaking down this album in a way that I hadn't been for the previous two. You know, I don't know. It's like walking up to a monument of some kind, because I think it is so, so good. And I think it stands up too. We'll talk about the lyrics and different things as we go through, but this past week, as I was listening to it, cliche alert, here's a cliche. It does sound like it could be released today in this era, with the lyrics, with the themes and the topics of the day on that album. And the music, of course, to me, it holds up because I think it's great music, but the theme of the album, the way the world is right now, it kind of fits. So let's jump into the first track. When you dropped the needle on War in 1983, you heard the iconic opening track, the rat-a-tat-tat drums, the military cadence of Larry Mullen on Sunday Bloody Sunday. What can you say? The song is great. It's iconic. It's an anthem. It's not a rebel song, which is the first thing I ever heard about it. Was that
right,
so? It's not a rebel
album,
song, but it is. It gave me a chance to learn about this very significant historical event that I didn't know anything about before. Halfway across the world, I began to understand a little bit about international situations and injustice in other parts of the world. But this song is so good. It holds you in this arrested state of, wow, this shit's important, So I love the song. What do you think?
So I'll turn it back on you. I asked this question to someone, I don't know, about 2 weeks ago. And my question was, why is this song so iconic? Because there's nothing, well, back up. There's not a lot about it that I think is relatable if you look at the song verbatim. It's really about the troubles in Ireland in primarily in the 70s and 80s. So why is the song iconic?
I can answer that because it defined who U2 was becoming, and it gave voice to their persona. It gave them their brand, if you will. Okay, it gave them.
I also think it's iconic because of MTV. It's iconic because you see the band live for the first time, and they're showing Sunday Bloody Sunday at Red Rocks, the white flag, and MTV really pushed that out for heavy play.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I don't know that you can think about that song now without having those images indelibly engraved in your memory bank.
For sure. Was there even a regular video for that song?
There was. Yeah, I don't think there was. And the first time I heard the song, and I'm sure it's the same for you too, no pun intended, but he's shaking his head. The first time I heard the song was on the live album. It wasn't off the studio. So when I heard it off the studio version, it sounds so much different because of the violin.
Mm-hmm.
It's slower. It sounds a lot different on the studio version. I think now, after having heard both years and years and years, I think the studio version is better.
It's superior. It is, and it makes you appreciate the craft of the song. The guy that plays the electric violin, the story is that he just came up to Edge, as they were starting the recording process, and he's like, "Hey, can I play on your record?" Very casual like, and however he got there, it fits.
Oh yeah,
it fits so well, and it's not like, "Oh, hey, listen, there's a violin." It's not like it gets in the way, and it doesn't sound weird. You might even not notice that it's a non-traditional rock instrument. You might even get through the whole song and be like, well, okay, yeah, I guess there was a violin in there, because it fits so well with the sound. I also think it is all the things you said because of the video, and because the video was doing something different. It wasn't hair metal was pretty big on MTV, and Def Leppard and that kind of strutting around and being pretty, and what we call haircut bands from Europe, and then so
The
like
new
all
wave
these,
stuff, yeah.
it was so anti everything that was happening that you're like, he's not trying to say how right he is or that he has to, he wants to rock like Twisted Sister. This is a guy that's saying we've got to have a white flag, we've got to surrender, we've got to be open to relating to each other and having respect and peace and all these things that were like, that doesn't fit with the narrative of of the 1980s. It was so counterintuitive. The icons of the 80s are more, bigger, faster, better, all of that. Mine, 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 the me decade. And
Adam Clayton, kind of to follow up on that, Adam Clayton said, and I quote, "Better judgment led to the removal of such a politically charged line, and that's that the song's viewpoint became very humane and non-sectarian, which is the only responsible position." So there were lyrics that they pulled out for, kind of to your point, kind of as, I guess, as perhaps as a bit of an olive branch, but, we also have to keep in mind that they were, this was a politically charged song in a very politically charged country. So, for example, it wasn't played in Northern Ireland from 1982 until 2015.
Good grief.
Yeah. We think that, oh, well, that's just them spouting off about, this is not a rebel song and, it makes for good theater. But I mean,
right.
They didn't feel comfortable playing the song in Northern Ireland until 2015.
So that also points out how removed we were in Middle America from the actual, because the theater of MTV is, look at this scenario that we're building up. We're making this storyline of, whatever it is, a Michael Jackson video or a Huey Lewis. These are scenarios. And, it's easy to lump this in with the other little fictional scenarios, these 3-minute capsules of this little theater we have, MTV, little snack-sized bites of music. And so the fact that it was a real thing, all of these troubles were going on in Northern Ireland, and that it lasted that long. It was a lasting thing that even until, like you said, 4 years ago, they wouldn't play that song. So, it's iconic because it made it realistic, I think. But you had to kind of work at that because it did look like a lot of other videos, but it's a real situation, not just some guy trying to get a girl.
I've said before that U2 is not the best band that ever set foot on the earth. They're not the most talented band that ever set foot on the earth, but I can argue that they're the most important band to set foot on the face of the earth. And this may have been the first real indication of that. This was the first time where you go, oh, this band's important, but yet I still didn't feel like it didn't feel like a band of self-importance. Because it was so different than anything else. It wasn't big hair and fancy, keyboards and new shoes and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And they mean it. That's the thing. I think
Right.
I also think it's cool the way in Sunday Bloody Sunday they start or they continue to use this mantra that they started in the first album, the How Long. I can't recall the exact songs that we talked about before from the first two albums that had that, but How Long. That same phrasing, it goes through this album from start to finish, as we know. It's a very biblical thought. It's a very spiritual thought of the how long must we endure? How long, O Lord, will this continue? It also made me feel like I understood more. And I was more sophisticated, worldly. I understood more about, I'm a political person now.
Or it prompted you to investigate what you didn't know. The 90% of the music doesn't compel you at that time, doesn't compel you to do that. The Eurythmics or the Go-Go's did not compel me to go investigate the issues.
Even if it did, it seemed to be all focused on America. And, the protest songs that I'd heard before, a lot of it was about, Vietnam or about different things in our history. And it opened me up to a global perspective for sure.
So
one more thing about Sunday Bloody Sunday. What about the Jesus reference? obviously it's specific and it's not pulling any punches, but I mean, it is sharp. It is like, look, here's the deal. We're going to say the name, and we're going to say it in a way that is not just ethereal and kind of vaguely, invoked like in October. We're not
I
gonna
think it's
slur
kind of the
word.
Prince of Peace reference. I think it's the it's obviously claiming the victory of the crucifixion and the resurrection. But I think it's more specifically, I think it's kind of the victory of good over evil, of order over chaos, of peace over war.
That's what I think. Yeah, for sure.
So Seconds, track 2, kind of an interesting change of pace tune for them. What are your thoughts on this one?
It kind of keeps that syncopated military kind of
Yep.
rhythm, that bass drum. It's an interesting sound, but I think it continues that tone of the militarized feeling of the album. I heard somebody say that it's the Edge on lead vocals on the first 2 verses, and I think that's
I don't think
incorrect.
so. No. Bono's on lead vocals on verse.
I think Edge can be clearly heard in backing.
Definitely.
Or like
Yes.
the echo.
That's on Under a Blood Red Sky. The video, we could go back and watch that and probably determine. But I used to have that on, of all things, beta.
You
But,
had a beta.
But we can probably verify that.
Well, either way, it's definitely a song that was topical because in the 80s, the Cold War was at its apex. It was definitely about nuclear proliferation and that anyone can build a bomb, have a bomb, set off a bomb. We were living in an age where we, as teenagers, live with the reality that let's not piss off the Russians too much, and they shouldn't piss us off because everybody's got their finger on a button that we could just make it happen and we'd all be dead. And, this to me was a very serious song. Even at age 16, I'm like, wow, makes you think, dude. But at the same time, it was more sophisticated than that. It was actually, it started naming names of European cities, and it made me feel worldly too.
USSR, GDR, London, New York, Peking.
I like the song a lot. I think it has that aggressive tone. I think it has that serious. This is a grown-up album. This is no longer a bunch of guys navel-gazing and thinking about, do we really want to be in a band? I think they're saying, look at the world. It's kind of a mess. We're kind of scared of things, and this is kind of our reality.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time to interject this, but I'll do it anyway. If anyone has not seen U2 perform at the US Festival in '83, it's worth your while to go check that out. I'm sure it's on YouTube. Larry Mullen on vocals, playing in shorts, and Bono climbing what must be a 50 or 60 foot scaffolding and singing from the top of the stage. So it's well worth your time to go check that out. It's a different U2 than maybe what we remember from recent times. But anyway, I just wanted to interject that before I forgot about it.
So this is a special ADD episode brought to you by the makers of Ritalin. Okay. So Seconds, I think, is a great song. I don't think there's a bad song on this album. I don't think there's a weak moment. I don't think there's a misstep. I think that it starts out strong with an anthem, and I think it goes into another anthem that is equally as important. It's just tight, sounds good, sounds pissed off. The ending is cool because it hangs there. Say Goodbye, and it just kind of hangs out there. It's what we call in radio business a cold fade. It's not a hard stop, but it's not a fade out. It's a cold fade. It kind of hangs there. Say Goodbye.
It's actually, I think, a fairly ambitious track. I think the problem that I see is that after song 1, there's going to be a step down. There just is. And I'm speaking specifically about Sunday Bloody Sunday. If you're going to have Sunday Bloody Sunday as your first track, and obviously it belongs in that spot. Then the next song, it's not like the Joshua Tree, and this is unfair, but I think there's a significant step down with Seconds. That the track 2 is, again, there's a noticeable drop off there. I think it's a bit ambitious when they throw in the interjection of the documentary from the Soldier Girls documentary.
I think it's cool. It reminds me of something from The Wall.
You're right. You're right. It does. You're right.
TV dialogue.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
But still, I mean, okay. Let me ask you this: the ultimate test of is it a drop off or not? Did you fast forward on the cassette past Seconds?
I would say half the time, yes. Half the time.
Also, no. I also remember that the War album came out on cassettes that had the full album on each side. The factory cassette.
I think you're right about that. You're right about that.
I definitely remember a friend of mine having the full album on each side. And that's the only album I ever saw like that.
I think you're absolutely right. Surprised.
So you would fast forward through that. Interesting.
It depends on my mood. I always like the Rebel Ranger part.
I would probably listen to this album on vinyl. If you look back down my life history, I'd say I have maybe listened to this album on vinyl more than on any other format.
Okay.
I mean, it's close. Maybe not, but still. So I wasn't going to fast forward through. I wasn't going to skip a track. I wasn't going to pick up the needle.
Right.
Pick up the dust cover, pick up a needle, try to find the right track.
You don't want to risk scratching the vinyl.
You couldn't. Then you got to put a penny on the.
That's right.
The next track is the bookend or the foundation track, part 1, New Year's Day. The second foundation, the other bookend, is on side 2. This to me is way more important than Sunday Bloody Sunday. It always has been. I've always liked it more personally. I happen to also remember that it's not one of your favorites. I always remember you.
You have good memory. You have a good memory.
You've told me it doesn't go anywhere. It just doesn't. It keeps building and doesn't get there. I disagree. I think it sustains.
I'm in the minority. I know I am.
Intensity. I think it is fantastic. I think New Year's Day grabs you by the collar and does not let up. It's an intense ride. It starts up here and it continues up there, and it succeeds on that level. Little trivia here. It's the third most played third most played song live by U2 in history.
I don't think it's a bad song.
Don't you want to know what the first 2 are? You didn't even hear me. It's the third most played live.
I would say Sunday Bloody Sunday's 1.
Incorrect. It's I Will Follow.
I Will Follow. We covered that actually in a previous podcast. I Will Follow, and let me see if I can guess the other one.
It's a song that's been mentioned in this podcast.
The Playboy Mansion.
No, it's been mentioned in this episode a minute ago.
Where the Streets Have No Name?
No. Pride in the Name of Love.
Really?
Those are the top 2 most played live songs. So anyway, New Year's Day is the third. To me, it is the song that sets the tone. Let me rephrase that. The first 2 songs set the tone. Now we're moving. The bass line opens. It is so good. To me, it is the best of everybody in the band. It's the best that anybody has done up to that point, all in one song. Not to mention, the Edge is so slick. He's going from keyboard to the guitar. And when I saw that live, it blew me away because I thought, no way, it's got to be,
I do like the keyboards on this song. I will say that. And I mean, the rest of the songs, as I said, I'm not poo-pooing the song. It's just not, for a lot of people, this song is in the upper pantheon of great U2 songs.
It is to me.
To me, it's never.
Dude, Arms
as you said, it's
the
just kinda
chosen
lazy.
few. It doesn't just lay there. It's incredibly high energy, and it builds. I don't know what you want, like some kind of a climactic sploof. I mean, look, this song is excellent. It starts out excellent, and it remains at that level. The lyrics, arms entwined, the chosen few.
I think maybe the lyrics get lost in, I don't know. As I said, I think it drags. No, I'm not disputing lyrically that it's a good song. And again, I'm not poo-pooing the whole song. I just don't think it's in the upper pantheon of, I can think of one, two, I might put 3 songs on this album ahead of it, maybe 4.
Just stop saying poo-poo. Okay.
Are we gonna bleep poo-poo out?
Well, somebody might. I love New Year's Day, and I also love the remixes of it. To me, it is an all-time great U2 song, and hearing it, seeing it live on Blood Red Sky makes it even more electric. So for me, it is.
I will say this. I think, and there's a remix out there called the USA Remix, Kevorkian Remix.
Yeah,
it's funny they call it Kevorkian.
Yeah,
but that remix I think is a solid step up from what's on the album. The lyrics are different. I think that remix should have made the album. I think that should have been what they put on the album. Stone Cold Night on a Stone Cold Floor.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking
light
of.
on a prison door.
Exactly.
And the intro is really, it's a slow piano.
That's
intro.
what I'm thinking of. The one that
yes, it's
exactly.
good. That's what I would have liked to have seen on the album, but I'm not Steve Lillywhite. So.
The lyrics too. It continues, I should say, with the theme of being with you. I will be with you again. We can be one. I will be with you again. It keeps invoking these couplets of being with you, or that we will be one. It's this underlying thread through, from Sunday, Bloody Sunday, all the way through to 40 on this album. The theme, the thread of being one, of becoming one, being with you, whether that you being God or being the people that you're estranged from, that is highlighted in the lyrics of New Year's Day. And to me, I love this line. We can break through, though torn in two, we can be one. And to me, the hope of I will begin again. Now, again, this is part of our own history with these songs. I remember being a very emotional, very kind of, who am I phase when this album was important to me, and trying to figure out who I am in terms of my own religion and my own identity in the world. And this song was very personal to me because I was believing that I will begin again. I will be with you again, in terms of, kind of repairing my own relationship with God, or figuring out what that is about. So it's probably a lot more personal with me than it is for you.
Mm-hmm.
But that's probably part of it. Still, I think it's just a real cracker, To
your point about it being sort of a song to be interpreted about relationships, I think this song was originally recorded to be a love song. I heard that. I think it in its very early stages, it was a love song. So some of these lyrical snippets, we will be as one, et cetera, those things were probably there from the get-go when the song was written. I think it's technically about the Solidarity Movement in Poland in '83.
Yeah, which is another thing that I didn't really know anything about. But as a result of this song, it prompted me to learn about what is happening in Poland, of all places. I didn't know anything about that.
Fine has never defied the odds. Fine has never met extraordinary. Penfolds meet extraordinary. Discover winemaking excellence at Penfolds.com.
Benbridge is your personal jeweler, your on-call treasure hunter, and fearless fashion explorer. 20 years ago, we introduced the most beautiful diamond we have ever offered. The signature Forevermark diamond, found exclusively at Benbridge, is beautiful, rare, and responsibly sourced. Each diamond is hand-selected and graded beyond the normal 4 Cs. Less than 1% of the world's diamonds qualify to become a signature Forevermark diamond. Click the banner to explore our signature Forevermark diamond collection.
Benbridge.
Like a Song, track 4. I think this is, I mentioned that there may be songs I put ahead of New Year's Day. This might be one of them. You know, when I hear the song, I don't know, the first 8 or 16 bars, whatever, I hear the Beatles. I think this is maybe up to this point is the song that tends to reflect their influence of the Beatles. And as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of the first song that to me, this album is the first album that drifts away from punk and kind of comes into more of an alternative genre. Along those lines, as I said, to me, I think the intro kind of harkens back to some things, some sounds that are reminiscent of the Beatles. In a sense, it's kind of almost like a continuation of New Year's Day thematically.
Mm-hmm.
When others need your touch, see, where is it? A new heart is what I need. This is so good.
Mm-hmm.
I won't slide him too much for throwing in a cliche of 2 wrongs won't make it right. Angry words won't stop the fight. 2 wrongs won't make a right. A new heart is what I need. Oh God, make it bleed. Is there nothing left? That's good.
Yeah, it's good.
That's oh God, make it bleed. Is there nothing left? That's good stuff.
This is a great song. I love this song, and I think it is
it's underrated.
It is so underrated. In fact, I'd say about 3 hours ago today, as I was just perusing one of the Facebook groups, I think it's U2 fans, somebody had posted the question, what's a great underrated track by U2? And somebody posted Like a Song. And I just jumped on that. Oh, yes, it totally is underrated. It really is. From the beginning, it has that intensity. It continues. It keeps the pace of this album. It's a very intense side one. And so here we fade out on New Year's Day, and this doesn't let you up for air, really. This is in your face. The drum beginning and the guitar is so raw throughout this song. It is, the finesse of Edge is what makes him so good. Like you said, the understated, kind of layered, sometimes feathery, his understated ethereal kind of guitar style. But this is jagged, and this is more like it's a true alternative sound. It's just a great hard rock song. The lyrics are right there. Like you said, that is just such a great verse.
Also like this. And if you can't help yourself, well, take a look around you. When others need your time, you say it's time to go. It's your time.
Yeah.
There were some very personal moments in October. I think the personal moments in October were focused around, and a lot of it was around faith, and some of it was around the death of his mother. But it's almost as if in this album, he goes deeper into the soul with some of the lyrics. Is there nothing left? Is there nothing left? Is honesty what you want? Some really uncomfortable, heart, soul-searching type of writing.
Yeah, and it's not preachy. He's not talking to somebody else, I don't think. I think it's as much about the excavation of his own soul.
Right. He's preaching himself here.
Yeah. And that, to me, once again, 17-year-old Jason here thinking about, no, I won't wear it on my sleeve. Exactly who are you? I reject the badge, the uniform of the way that I was. Again, I'm going through a religious change in my own life of how I was brought up. Is that the way that I choose to be? Is that a faith that I claim as my own? And so, what I was doing was leveraging this into my own life and thinking that's exactly how I feel. You can't tell me that I have to be that way. What's real is that we're fighting and letting people live in hell and letting people have need. The world is at war. There are hungry people. There are people that need more help than us, claiming to be able to interpret the Bible the right way. So this is a very personal song for me as my evolution went on. Plus, it made me feel so cool because I could say a generation without name. That's just so adult sounding.
Oh, it's the tagline for Gen X.
It is. It is. But
Yeah.
I think this song is a hidden gem. Talking about how often they've played songs live is fascinating to me. They've played this song live one time. I looked it up. And if anyone could find that.
Yes, please let us know. I would love to. Yeah. I haven't searched for it. Maybe it's easily found, but
Maybe.
yeah, somebody put that on our feed if you can find it.
So what we decided to do was to go ahead, and after we talk about Drowning Man, the last track on side one, we decided to go ahead and close out this episode. This
side one.
Yeah, let's call this side one. And
it's a cassette.
It is, except
although technically, if it's all on one
the
side,
album on one side.
Yeah, but
okay, this is a homemade cassette.
Yes.
We'll stop it at side one, and then we'll continue on side two. The last track, Drowning Man, is haunting and somber, and it finally lets you take a breath after this super intense side one. 4 songs that are at this level of intensity and anger and turmoil, and then you have this dark, somber, like something from October that's more fully realized as a piece of music. It does remind me of kind of that atmospheric sound. We talk about placement of songs on albums. I think this is a genius place. I think one of the great things about this album is the order of the songs, and this being a way to kind of take a minute. Okay, what did we just go through, and where are we now? I feel like because of all the things that we just talked about, this is, I think, the band saying, so how do we feel? As a result of that, we feel like we're drowning. We feel like the world is overwhelming. And again, that's 2020. I feel like a drowning man. I feel like this is exactly contemporary culture, and that's how I feel right now. But then they bring it around to say, we have a hope. We have that hope that we will rise up on wings of eagles. It's straight from Isaiah 40. That has been on many. Congratulations on your high school graduation. Here's a little plaque as you go off to college. That's exactly the life verse of many of us who grew up in the mainstream church. But the beauty and the power of that passage from the Old Testament, it cannot be minimized, because when you look at a world of 1983, of 2020, and you feel overwhelmed, to me, this is one of the essence points of U2, of no easy answers, no pat Christian kind of cliches, but look, we feel broken, and this is where we find strength.
This album was a bit difficult to break down and I think it's because, as I mentioned earlier, his songwriting has taken a step forward, so that you pretty much know what's going on in Boy, and you pretty much know what's going on in October. And in War, as I said, there are these different avenues of conflict. It's not nation versus nation. It may be person versus person. It may be one person fighting themselves. And so I think that it leaves some sort of gray areas of interpretation. And boy, that's going to be the MO of the next album for sure. But I don't know if this song is. I've read that it is about Adam's substance abuse. And then I've read that it might strictly be a faith song about trying to persuade someone to reach out to Christ. And it could be both of those. I don't know that there's anything lyrically that would drive it toward either one of those. I don't know. I can see both of those things maybe in the music.
I'd never heard that about Adam.
I don't know that I buy that. I mean, it could be. I think it's perhaps an overly simplistic, easy interpretation. But maybe it is in the general sense, just like you said. Maybe it's, hey, times are tough, and in the midst of these difficult times, here's a ray of hope. Here's a ray of light.
Well, I think that's the way it applied to me. I think it's universally available to apply however it means something to you as an individual, you know?
But, he's saying, take my hand, I'll be there if you can. From what perspective is he?
Oh, I see. He's not playing, he's not in the role of God saying,
Right.
Take my hand.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And I'm not arguing that it's one or the other. I'm
Well, it
open
could
to
be- yeah, it
all
could be.
interpretations. It's
Right.
just, again, I think some of this open interpretation is a little bit of a byproduct of Bono coming in, transitioning from a phase of writing songs that are they're clear and definable
Mhm.
into sketches. And
Much
he
more
really
sophisticated
starts
stuff.
sketching in definitely the next album, and even in the
it's
Joshua Tree.
right on. So this could be a "You Got a Friend" kind of thing, but I mean, in a much more somber way. And the music is so cool sounding, isn't it? It's got that dark. It comes from left field sonically. It doesn't have the rat-a-tat drums anymore. It doesn't have the throbbing bass. It is just this painting of a song, you know?
One thing I failed to mention earlier that I needed to mention is that if you listen to his vocals on this album, it is so much different than his vocals on Boy. And I mean, he's a bit older. His voice has probably matured a little bit. But I heard, I think it was a single version of 11 O'Clock TikTok, and which was released as a single overseas. It just is a strong punk sounding vocal.
Mhm.
And here in War, again, it's more polished, it's more focused, it's
more full.
There's
Yeah.
more.
There's more nuance and more range.
Yeah, and the production is better. Again, they're drifting away from this post-punk mode, and this, I think, is their first album where they become an American alternative band.
Yeah.
And I think his vocals tend to bring that along.
I think you're exactly right about that. And it's amazing the difference in his vocals. It was kind of that whiny, nasally, punky kind of,
It's like
you
he
know,
tried too hard to be.
yeah, almost an affected kind of, he's almost imitating the way he thinks he should sound.
Right.
But when he realized or developed, or a combination of the two, what his voice could be, he began to have this range and this full-throated sound of range of way up here, way down here, and everything in between. He can do that nimbly. And I think you're right. It sounds like a more polished, much more sophisticated effort all the way around. The songs are more well-defined. As we wrap up side one, so it's like you said, this is an album that can be very emotional, very personal. To me, it was personal, but also it helped me to understand the world in a much more meaningful way as a 16-year-old boy. So we'll come back with side two here in just a bit. We'll drop these as two separate pieces of episode 4. And for now, we'll ask you to follow us on Twitter or on Instagram. We're on Facebook. And Don, what are those handles?
I don't know.
Well, you're such a big. We're at Roll Doggies on Twitter. We're at Rock and Roll Doggies on Facebook, and we're at Rock and Roll Doggies on Instagram. It's not that hard, really.
No, if you knew, why'd you ask me?
Trying to include you. Just trying to give
okay. Was taking a nap. Sorry.
spot here. So that's it for now. It is Jason here along with the Smurf. Take it home, bro.
So, thanks for logging on and listening to our thoughts on one of the most influential bands of the modern era. As Jason said, please be sure to follow us at Rock and Roll Doggies on Instagram and on Twitter at @RollDoggies for details about our next podcast and other juicy tidbits as we take a chronological journey through the discography of U2. We shall return soon. Thanks, everybody.
No, it's a musical journey.
Produced for Richard Lerma. The client is the Home Depot. Production date October 21st, 2020. Copyright 2020. This is a 30-second stereo spot in Spanish. Spot title, Pro Paint / Bear Pro i300 / $17.99 / Hispanic / CN30. Ad ID YHTHD24RR30.
Como pintor profesional, eres tan bueno como tu último trabajo. Hazlo aún mejor con la pintura Behr Pro i300 para interiores de The Home Depot. Desde solo $17.99 el galón. Y eso es antes del descuento Pro Extra. Obtienes un desempeño superior que cubre y esconde cada detalle. Y una aplicación fácil y rápida con rociador, rodillo o brocha. Haz tu mejor trabajo con la pintura Behr Pro i300 para interiores a $17.99 el galón. En The Home Depot, haces más, logras más. Disponible en tiendas y por internet.
Benbridge is your personal jeweler, your on-call treasure hunter, and fearless fashion explorer. 20 years ago, we introduced the most beautiful diamond we have ever offered. The signature Forevermark diamond, found exclusively at Benbridge, is beautiful, rare, and responsibly sourced. Each diamond is hand-selected and graded beyond the normal 4 Cs. Less than 1% of the world's diamonds qualify to become a signature Forevermark diamond. Click the banner to explore our signature Forevermark diamond collection.
Benbridge.
Looking for ways to save on your energy bills? AES Indiana has you covered. From smart thermostats to home energy assessments, we offer simple solutions to keep your home comfortable and your costs down. AES can help you save money and energy with kits, tips, rebates, and more. Visit aesindiana.com/ways to save to learn more about how we can help you save money. AES Indiana, helping you discover real ways to save.